Vallabha Girivadadhari Jashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtadidashita Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashtadidashita Shishimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chapter 8, titled Questions by King Parikshit. Today we are reading text number 22. Word for word, please repeat after me. Yaha va anushayanam sargaha pashandasya cha sambhavaha atmanaha bandha mokshau cha vyavasthanam svarupataha yovanushayanam sarga yovanushayanam sarga pashandasya cha sambhavaha pashandasya cha sambhavaha atmano bandha mokshau cha atmano bandha mokshau cha vyavasthanam svarupataha vyavasthanam svarupataha Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha. Please repeat.
Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha
Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha
Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha
Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha.
Mataji's, would you like to chant?
Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam svarupataha Yovanushayinam sarga Pashandasya cha sambhavaha Atmano bandha mokshau cha Vyavasthanam
Svarupataha. Word for word translation. Yaha, all those. Va, either. Anushayanam, merged into the body of the Lord. Sargaha, creation. Pashandasya, of the infidels. Cha, and. Sambhavaha, appearance. Atmanaha, of the living beings. Bandha, conditioned. Mokshau, being liberated. Cha, also. Vyavasthanam, being situated. Svarupataha, in an unconditioned state. Translation. Please also explain how, merged in the body of the Lord, living beings are created, and how the infidels appear in the world. Also, please explain how the unconditioned living entity exists. Purport. The progressive devotee of the Lord must inquire from the bona fide spiritual master how living entities merged in the body of the Lord again come back at the time of creation. There are two kinds of living entities. There are the ever liberated, unconditioned living beings, as well as the ever conditioned living beings. Of the ever conditioned living beings, there are two divisions. They are the faithful and the infidels. Of the faithful, there are again two divisions, namely the devotees and the mental speculators. The mental speculators desire to merge into the existence of the Lord, or to become one with the Lord, whereas the devotees of the Lord desire to keep separate identities and constantly engage in the service of the Lord. The devotees who are not fully purified, as well as the empiric philosophers, become conditioned again during the next creation for further purification. Such conditioned souls become liberated by further progress of devotional service to the Lord. Maharaj Parikshit asked all these questions from the bona fide spiritual master in order to become fully equipped in the science of God. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutav Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Raghuna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarapyascha Kripa Sintubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanepyo Vaishnavepyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In this purport, Srila Prabhupada is describing all the different categories of jivas. And jivas, of course, meaning the spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. So here he mentions 6 categories. It's good like this. You sure? Thank you. So he mentions 6 categories of jivas in this purport. The conditioned jivas, the unconditioned jivas. Then of the conditioned jivas, there are the faithful and the infidels. And then of the faithful, there are the devotees and the mental speculators. And so, conditioned souls are otherwise called nitya baddha. Baddha means bound up, and nitya means sort of like eternal or everlasting. So these are, as Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, ever-conditioned souls. And that describes us, some of us at least. How we are, trapped in the cycle of samsara, dava, nalalid, haloka. the blazing fire of material existence, going through birth after birth, death after death, trying to enjoy this material world. And it's a very miserable condition to be in. It's a very miserable condition to be a conditioned soul. And so of the conditioned souls, then there are the faithful versus the infidels. Infidels, those of you who don't know, infidel is one who has no process of religion. That's the dictionary definition of infidel. Whereas faithful obviously means you have faith. Not just any faith, because even the animals, they have faith that if I climb this tree, I'll get my nut. But Srila Prabhupada here, when he says faithful, he specifically refers to being faithful in some higher power other than just material sense gratification, having some sort of intellectual capacity to understand there's something more out there, to have faith that there is a higher being. So, faithful and infidels, I would further define this category, elaborating on the gist of what Srila Prabhupada is saying, is that the faithful are those classes of jivas that are in the bodies of human beings, whereas the infidels are those who are in the body of animals. And so, those of us in human bodies, we may actually fall into this infidel category. We may actually have the qualification of an animal. That is, we may eat, sleep, have sex, and defend our property. And that is the very sum and substance of our lives. And we don't go beyond that platform. Therefore, a so-called human being who has the consciousness of an animal is actually more or less an animal, and is not really deserving to be called a human being. And then of the faithful, those who have faith in a higher power or a higher being, there are the devotees and the mental speculators. And so devotees are those who engage in the devotional service of the Lord. And they accept not only just a higher power, but they accept that the higher power is personal, and they attempt to render service unto He. Whereas on the other hand, mental speculators are those, well, there's so many different categories of mental speculators. One kind of mental speculator is the impersonalists. They may even read Shastra, but they don't accept the conclusion of the personal form of the Lord, but rather they come up with their own interpretations. Their interpretations that God is just some vague light, or it's just all Brahman. It's just all Brahman energy. And ultimately, we are one with God because we are ultimately Brahman, and God is ultimately Brahman. So at the topmost level, we are one with God. So we are one with God, but on the topmost level, we have personal relationships with God. So this is the conclusion of Shastra. Shastra mentions this Brahman effulgence, this Brahman quality that we share with God. And we are one with God in that sense, but on a higher level, we are servants of God, and we are individuals. We have our own separate identity, and we're meant to engage ourselves in the loving service of the Lord. Another kind of mental speculator is a Mayavad. I've just described impersonalists. And impersonalists and Mayavads, they get these two Mayavadis, right? These two terms get conflated, Mayavad and impersonalists. Mayavadis are those who think ultimately they are God, whereas impersonalists just think that everything is impersonal. Mental speculators can also refer to those who don't accept Shastra, but they do accept that there's some vague light being or something like this. So moving on, the category of devotees. It's interesting that Srila Prabhupada, he puts devotees under the category of conditioned souls. In this purport, that's what he does. He puts devotees under the category of conditioned souls. But we can understand that this category of unconditioned souls, they're of course devotees. Prabhupada doesn't need to mention it, it's pretty obvious. In an unconditioned state, we are eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. Whereas in a conditioned state, we are forgetting of this fact that we are eternal servants of the Lord. So there are a category of devotees within the material world. There are conditioned souls that are devotees, namely the demigods. So the demigods would fall under this category. Under the category of faithful, there are the devotees and the mental speculators. And demigods would fall under the category of devotees. Whereas mental speculators would be, humans like us. Because if we have such mental speculating tendencies, if we don't really follow what's in Shastra, but we try to concoct our own thing, then there's no chance of us being elevated to higher planetary systems. And so like this, if we remain on the platform of mental speculation, we will not go higher in our karmic cycle. We will not surpass this current plane we are on. We may go lower into the animal species, or we may just remain a human being. I'll talk more about that later. Devotees not only are demigods in this category, but also those who are aspiring after the lotus feet of pure devotees, those who recognize, yes, I am a conditioned soul, yes, I am helpless, stuck in this material world, but at least I have the hope that my dear gurus have come here and blessed me, and they're pulling me up. And so I think many people here fall into that category of devotees who are in this human body. We don't have demigod bodies. We may have been demigods in the last life, but we fall under this category of devotees simply because we have transferred our previously materialistic, mental speculative consciousness, and we've transitioned into focusing on the lotus feet of the acharyas. And so this is our qualification for, what is my qualification? But if anything, my qualification is that I've got the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all of the acharyas. That is the qualification of one who is really devotee. Again, I'm getting there, but who knows? Slowly but surely. So purification can be a slow process. Those who are aspiring to be devotees, they can even remain in this material world lifetime after lifetime. It doesn't, just because we've taken up to this process of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't guarantee that we will go back to Godhead in this life. Now, if we stick strictly to the process of Krishna consciousness, now then that guarantees we'll go back to Godhead. Or we may take another birth in the material world to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, if that's our desire. But purification can be a slow process. There are many in the Krishna consciousness movement who don't take it super seriously. And I believe my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti-Vikas Swami, says that no one ever fell down by being too strict. And so His Holiness Bhakti-Vikas Swami is a perfect example of someone who is so sternly and strictly stuck to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Because if we even get diverted for a fraction of a second, then we're in Maya. The material energy is so strong. Daivihi esho gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mam evaye prapadyante mayam etam turantite. Krishna says that this divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. But he who surrenders unto me and takes shelter of me can overcome the material world easily. And our process for overcoming this material world and surrendering to Krishna is by following the instructions of his representatives. And so yes, if we don't take this process of Krishna consciousness very seriously, if we don't stick super strong to the lotus feet of the Guru, then we actually fall under the category of karma yoga. So karma yoga, karma means activities, and yoga means linking with the Supreme. So karma yoga, it can be defined as doing devotional service, but in a fruitive way, in a way where you're seeking good karma while still performing devotional service. It's still yoga. Yoga meaning to link with the Supreme. So there are 4 types of fruitive workers. There are 4 types of karma yogis. Chaturvidha bhajante mam, jana sukrituno arjuna, artojinyasur artarti jnani cha bharatarshabha. I probably butchered that. But the gist of that verse in the Bhagavad Gita, this is from the 7th chapter, is that there are 4 types of fruitive workers. There's the karmis, one who is after fruit of gain. There's the jnanis, one who is seeking knowledge. There are those who are inquisitive, and there are those who simply want relief of their misery. So if this is our motive for taking up to devotional service, is any of these 4 things, which are material desires, then we fall under the category of karma yogis. Although they are material desires, we are engaging those desires in the service of the Lord. So the idea is that eventually, through devotional service, we will become purified. And we will no longer have this fruitive mentality. And then we will reach the platform of pure devotional service. Anya bhilashita shunyam, jnana karma dyanavritam, anukulyena krishnanu, sevanam bhaktir uttama. So Rupa Goswami, this verse, Anya bhilashita shunyam, it's a very, very important verse for Vaishnavas in general. And Rupa Goswami compiled this verse, which is documented in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And it means, one who is engaged in pure loving devotion for devotional service for Krishna, without any desire for fruitive material gain, then that person ultimately transcends the material world and attains the abode of Krishna. That's the gist of this verse. So Srila Prabhupada, he's also discussing how mental speculators, they come back at the time of creation. Of the faithful, again, there's the devotees and the mental speculators. The devotees, they have a chance of transcending. By performing devotional service, they have the chance of becoming unconditioned living entities. Whereas the faithful who are just mental speculators, they don't engage in the service of the Lord, and thus they don't have the grace of the Lord, the grace which can pull one from material conditioning. And so mental speculators, they are for sure, they're guaranteed to continue in the cycle of birth and death. Whereas devotees, we have a chance. We have a chance. Again, I'm calling myself a devotee. I'm pretty puffed up. Because one's material mind, it can't uplift one. So this mind is actually, these minds we have are actually composed of the 3 modes of material nature. We're constantly dragged by our minds in the modes of passion and ignorance predominantly here in this age of Kali. Our minds are so conditioned by the modes of passion and ignorance, and we've been cooking in this material world, and we're so agitated. We want sense gratification. And we see sense gratification all around us, but it's just like a mirage in the desert. Because once you try to get it, then you find it's just completely barren, and you feel, so dry, so empty. Your heart is so empty trying to fulfill your material desires. This is the material mind. And Lord Rishabhadev says that when he's teaching his sons, he says that, why should one put their faith in the mind? Why should one put your faith in the mind? It's kept us here in the cycle of birth and death for so long and is giving so much misery. So why put faith in the mind? We should think with our intelligence and ignore the mind, neglect the mind. The mind may have so many desires, maybe bugging us, nudging us all the time here and there, telling us, oh, look at that, I want that, or I want this. But we should just ignore the mind. So similarly, the mind may come up with some big realization. Sometimes I get some speculation, I start to speculate, and then I come up with some big realization. I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. I've finally understood. And then maybe I talk to a devotee about it, and I just get smashed. And the big realization, oh, I understood everything. And then oh yeah, I didn't see the hole in my logic there, and now everything is ruined. So the mind has this ability to run with itself, where we get an idea and we keep, going with that idea, and it builds up and it builds up. And then pretty soon you have this whole Western society, which is just a big culmination of just mentally speculated culture. And we have all these fashion trends, and they're always evolving. I mean, you had, grunge culture in the 90s, and then that turned into hip-hop culture, and then you get, skateboard culture, and then now is, skateboard culture is, the big thing everybody wants to do. And it's just some big mental speculation. You get a piece of wood, and you just flick it one way or the other, and people glorify you for flicking around a piece of wood. It really has no meaning at all. The meaning derived out of skateboarding is just a mental speculation. Any mundane sport, for that matter, anyways, I'm not going to get too deep into this because I myself and my mind is pulling me into Maya as I speak. But yeah, we pray to Krishna to control our minds because our minds are material. And we pray to Krishna, please Krishna, engage my mind in devotional service. King Kulashekara in the Mukundamala Stotram, he prays, my Lord Krishna, I pray that the swan of my mind may immediately sink down to the stems of the lotus feet of your lordship and be locked up in their network. Otherwise, at the time of my final breath, when my throat is choked up with cough, how will it be possible to think of you? So we pray to Krishna, my mind is so entangled in all these fruitive activities and all these mental speculations. Please just somehow get me tangled up in your devotional service. I want to be bound up. Right now I'm bound up by the modes of material nature, and I'm in pain. And Krishna, you are my relief, so please entangle me in your lotus feet. So this is the mood of King Kulashekara, and as aspiring devotees, we should have this mood as well. So out of all these different categories that Srila Prabhupada talks about in the purport, the jivas, they shift throughout these different categories. With the exception of the unconditioned souls, they don't per se become conditioned. Then again, the jiva fell from the spiritual world. We're not going to get into that. But the unconditioned soul the ever unconditioned soul doesn't become ever conditioned. Unconditioned souls are referred to as nitya siddha, eternally liberated. So, among the categories of conditioned souls, the jivas, they float through all these different categories. Sometimes they may be devotees, sometimes they may be animals, sometimes they may be human beings, so rotating in the cycle of birth and death. And the spirit soul, which is us, is, floating through all these different bodies, all these different positions in the material world. We've been practically everywhere. We've been here billions of lifetimes. And so the infidels, or the animals, people in animalistic consciousness, they can either become mental speculators, say for instance, I guess myself for an example, before I was completely a materialistic sense gratifier. And then I started inquiring a little into the absolute truth, and I came up with some mental speculations. So in this way, the infidels can become mental speculators. Also, Mrigari the hunter, who was a disciple of Narada Muni. Previously to taking initiation from Narada Muni, he was a hunter who got trained by his father in the art of killing. And he had such a way of killing where he would kill the animal and let them slowly die. And this was the very strategic technique passed down for generations, the culmination of his family tradition, was this art of killing. Narada Muni, upon coming across Mrigari the hunter, turned him into a pure devotee. So much so that Mrigari the hunter, he was even scared to walk on the ground because there's ants everywhere and he didn't want to kill anybody. So he fully surrendered to Narada Muni. This is an example of an infidel becoming a devotee. Also, there are many instances of animals becoming liberated. It's been mentioned a few times recently, but Janananda Maharaj has written a book, Animals in Krishna Consciousness, something like this. Very ecstatic book. I haven't read it, but there's many instances of animals who have gotten the mercy of pure devotees and actually become devotees. Animals showing up to temples. There's Lord Chaitanya. He's dancing in the forest with tigers and bears. I don't know, are there bears in Bengal? Deer. So he's dancing with all these animals and they're becoming fully liberated. Also, there are the mental speculators. And the mental speculators, they can become devotees. And also, within the category of mental speculators, there are the Mayavadis. Mayavadis can also become devotees. Mayavadis are actually in the most fallen position because they think themselves to be God, which is the most offensive mentality and the biggest setback in one's spiritual life. Becoming a Mayavadi is the last snare of Maya, this Mayavad mentality, where you're coming up to the platform, okay, there's something higher, there's a God, and then, oh, I am God. And then like that, your whole progress is demolished when you become a Mayavad. An example of a Mayavad becoming a devotee is the Mayavad sannyasis at Benares. There's a picture back in the temple, and Lord Chaitanya is sitting amongst all the sannyasis. These are all Mayavadi sannyasis. And he's preaching to them, and they actually all become devotees through Lord Chaitanya's association. Also, devotees, those who are in the categories of devotees, obviously, devotees can become infidels. So, the demigods can sink back into lower species of life. We've been there many times. We've been demigods, and we go back to animal life. Also, there's the instance of Indra, King Indra, who made an offense and therefore became a pig. Devotees obviously also can become mental speculators. They start to doubt, those who are in this human form of life that we are temporarily on this platform. As practicing devotees, we can become mental speculators. We could start to think, this Shastra, I don't know, this doesn't quite make sense. But it makes sense if it's like this. And then, we start to come up with our own ideas. And like that, we become mental speculators. Our chance of going back to Godhead is lost. Devotees can also become atheists. I'm not going to say names. I don't even know this individual's name, but there's somebody on YouTube who was around during Srila Prabhupada's time, and he joined the temple and everything, and he got so much mercy. And now he makes YouTube videos doing psychoanalysis of different devotees. And this is the completely offensive thing to do, to equate the mood of devotees and the mood of devotional service to be just a psychological phenomenon. So, like this, devotees can become mental speculators. And of course, the perfection is that devotees can become unconditioned souls, or conditioned devotees can become unconditioned souls. And so this is, the way to do this is by following our predecessor acharyas, as I have previously mentioned. Okay. Okay, so in the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the living entities, how they're merged in the Lord at the time of creation. And Shukadev Goswami, one of his questions here is again, how are the living beings created? And how do infidels appear in the world? So how are living beings created? Srila Prabhupada, he was introduced to the philosophy of Origen, which was a Christian philosopher. And Origen, he believed that the Lord, he created the living beings. That at one point in time, the jivas, they didn't exist, but then the Lord created them. Srila Prabhupada rejected this, so this is not true. The living beings are eternally existent. So why is Maharaj Parikshit asking here, how are the living entities created? Well, here we can infer that he's referring to how are their material bodies created. How do they come into being? Bhagavad Gita 2:12, Natve vaham jatunasam natvam ne me janadhipaha nachaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayam ataf param. Meaning never there was a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So the spirit soul, we are never created. We're eternally existent. I mean, that's obviously one of the qualities of spiritual energy, is that it's eternal. It is chit, right? No, chit is knowledge. Sat is eternal, right? Yeah. So sat, this is a Sanskrit word meaning eternal. So the soul is sat. So the living entity is created, the body is created, and similarly it is annihilated. And then there's also Srila Prabhupada mentions the devotees who are not fully purified, as well as the empiric philosophers, become conditioned again during the next creation for further purification. So the jivas, they're manifested and unmanifested at the time of the creation and dissolution. As we know, there are 3 forms of Vishnu, one of which is in the back there, this picture of Mahavishnu, Karanardakashayi Vishnu, who is lying on the causal ocean, and as he breathes, all the universes are emanating from his pores. And so this is the highest Vishnu, for lack of a better term, for talking purposes. And we are there's unlimited universes emanating from his pores, and we're situated in just a little universe. And Mahavishnu breathes it out, the universe is manifested, and he breathes back in, and the universe is unmanifested. And so within this breathing out is the total duration, the life of Lord Brahma, our minuscule lives, the whole shebang, in one breath of Mahavishnu. And once he breathes us in, then the living entities, they're temporarily merged into the Mahat Tattva. The Mahat Tattva is a very confusing term, but it more or less means the totality of unmanifested energy is the Mahat Tattva, or the causal ocean, if I'm not mistaken. And so the living entities, they're unmanifest. When in the Mahat Tattva, they're dormant, sort of like in a sleeping state. We're like sleeping when we're merged in the Mahat Tattva. And then once we are breathed back out by Mahavishnu, then we become manifest, and we take up again to our karmic progress. So whatever level we're at the end of the total dissolution, which is also Lord Brahma's death, is the total dissolution. Brahma being the creator of this universe. He dies, and then we merge back into the Mahat Tattva. That's the end of that universe. So we're unmanifested at this point in the Mahat Tattva, and then whatever we were before merging in the Mahat Tattva, we again resume that position after the Mahat Tattva. So it's not like we're liberated by the end of the universe. We're We are simply temporarily in a sleeping state. Okay, moving on. So I've elaborated on the different categories of the conditioned souls, what constitutes conditioned souls, etc. Now I will talk about unconditioned souls, because Shukadev Goswami is also asking, please explain how the unconditioned living entities exist. So there is a definition of this unconditioned soul found in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 8, text number 5. Mukha kaivita kare yan sabar smarane, pangu giri langhe andha dekhe taragane. By remembering the lotus feet of the Panchatattva, a dumb man can become a poet, a lame man can cross mountains, and a blind man can see the stars in the sky. So this is amazing. This is, becoming an unconditioned soul, becoming qualified for receiving the mercy of the Lord and becoming an unconditioned soul is independent of one's material condition. As mentioned here, a dumb man can become a poet, a lame man can cross mountains, and a blind man can see stars in the sky. Anything is possible in the unconditioned state. The Lord is above the material world, above the three modes of material nature. Therefore, He is the superintendent of the three modes of material nature and the material world. So if we're stuck in the material world and we surrender to Krishna, then we can become liberated. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions the three kinds of unconditioned living entities. In a Vaishnava philosophy, there are three ways for perfection, namely sadhana siddha, perfection attained by executing devotional service according to the rules and regulations. So sadhana, we've all heard this word. Sadhana means our daily practice, or our routine, the process of devotional service. The so-called mechanical process of devotional service is the sadhana. So sadhana siddhas are those who have attained perfection by executing the process of devotional service according to rules and regulations. And there are also nitya siddha, eternal perfection attained by never forgetting Krishna at any time. And then kripa siddha, perfection attained by the mercy of the spiritual master or another Vaishnava. We know this mercy, kripa kori korotare brindavanavasi. So kripa means mercy, and so kripa siddha are those who have attained perfection by receiving the mercy of the spiritual master. If we are to stick to this process of devotional service, then we are to be considered kripa siddhas. Whereas Srila Prabhupada, he's a nitya siddha, because he was always unconditioned, and he actually appeared within this material world as an unconditioned soul, just to help us out. And it says here that a nitya siddha is one who never forgets Krishna at any time. And Srila Prabhupada himself said, I never forgot Krishna. And he was born in a nice Vaishnava family, and he was a Vaishnava his whole term in this material world. So he's a nitya siddha. And we also fall in the category of sadhana siddha because we practice via the rules and regulations. So like this, we receive the mercy and follow the rules and regulations, and we can become unconditioned like this. Just finish off this nice purport. Kaviraj Goswami here stresses kripa siddha, perfection by the mercy of superior authorities. This mercy does not depend on the qualifications of a devotee. By such mercy, even if a devotee is dumb, he could speak or write to glorify the Lord splendidly. Even if lame, he can cross mountains, and even if blind, he could see the stars in the sky. So in this, in the spirit of talking about being an unconditioned soul, I'd like to go through this nice bhajan, Gaurangera Dutipada. So the translation of the first verse of this bhajan is, those whose wealth and treasure is Gauranga's 2 feet know the excellence of devotional ecstasy. When Gauranga's sweet pastimes enter one's ears, their hearts become pure. So we receive the nectar coming from the acharyas, and our hearts become pure. The words emanating from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master were purified by that. Guru Mukha Padmavakya Chitette Koriya Aikya. Arna Koriyo Maniash. And we merge our hearts with the spiritual master in that we take up their desires. And we become one with desire with the spiritual master. And that's real love, to interact with the spiritual master on that platform of having the same desire. The next verse, when one chants Gauranga's name, divine love arises in them. I feel astonished at that. Eternal pastimes are revealed to those who shed tears, hearing Gauranga's qualities. Such persons are qualified for devotion. Those who consider Gauranga's association to be eternally liberated reach Krishna, the son of King Vraja. Those who always think about Sri Gauramandal reside in the land of Vraja. So again, those who always think of Sri Gauramandal reside in the land of Vraja. This refers to Nitya Siddha. And the verse itself says, Gaurangera Sangagane Nitya Siddha Karimane Se Yai Vrajendra Sutapash. Those who always think about Sri Gauramandal reside in the land of Vraja. So this is the process of residing in the land of Sri Gauramandal, the land of Vraja, which, would be the perfection of our lives, because this material world, it's full of so many difficulties. It's full of so much anxiety, and the spiritual world is the land which is free of anxiety. And here we're like a fish out of water. We're constantly flapping around and struggling to breathe in such difficult situations. And the spiritual world, it's like the ocean. So when we dive into this ocean of Hari Katha, then we are relieved of these anxieties. And so we can practically do this right now. If we have the desire to, we can reside in the land of Vraja. Our minds can be absorbed in Hari Katha, in the talks of Lord Krishna, in the stories, the pastimes, everything, all the paraphernalia of Krishna. If we absorb our minds in this, then we are free of this material anxiety. The last verse, those who dive into the waves in the divine ocean of love for Gauda are intimate associates of Sri Sri Radha Madhav. No matter whether one lives in a house or a forest, if they call out to Gauranga, Narottam begs for their association. There's another translation to this which I like better, this last verse in particular. And when I read this translation, I think about book distribution. So it's very appropriate. This one. Anyone who takes pleasure sporting within the waves of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of God immediately becomes a confidential devotee of Sri Sri Radha Madhava. So this seems to describe exactly book distribution. And we're doing it, not me, unfortunately, not today, but next week, don't worry. Taking pleasure in sporting within the waves of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love. So we're here competing with each other and trying to beat one another. We're competing, but ultimately we all have the same desire to serve Srila Prabhupada and become an instrument of Lord Chaitanya. And this is a very important thing to understand, that I couldn't find the quote. Prabhu, you probably know where this is from, but somebody says that that this book distribution, it is linked with the topmost mellows of devotional service. Do you know what I'm talking about? Prabhupada says that. Yeah, unfortunately I couldn't find the reference, but anyways, Prabhupada says...
That's the explanation in Nikunji. Well,
Oh,
there's
okay.
also the Rameshwar Prabhu asks in a letter to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada confirms that.
Okay. So Rameshwar Prabhu asked in a letter to Srila Prabhupada, is this book distribution connected with the topmost mellows of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada confirms this. The mood of the gopis, okay.
Specifically, Rameshwar.
Right, okay. I'm starting to remember now. So this book distribution is intimately linked with it's in its pure form. This book distribution is in the mood of the gopis. So through this book distribution, we can attain the topmost mellows of devotional service. And it's very important that this book distribution is the topmost thing, because it's the thing Srila Prabhupada stressed the most. It's a big desire he had, is to distribute these books, and this is the practical way which we distribute Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Of course, Harinam, chanting musically is also there, and that is not different. That is Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of God. But this book distribution, it's called the Brihat Mridanga, because it's meaning the louder mridanga, because these books, they can travel so much further than the sound of the physical sound of a mridanga. And so it's very important to understand that this book distribution is the highest thing. And when we're distributing this book, when a pure devotee, when a nice devotee is distributing these books, then they are actually in samadhi. They're actually experiencing prem through this book distribution. It's not that this book distribution is only a way which we can get to the stage of prem, and then once we get to prem, then we just sit there and be absorbed in Krishna. No, prem is felt in book distribution. So, anyways, this is an important thing to understand, how this book, by doing this book distribution, we can attain the topmost feelings of devotion. And a pure devotee who wants to serve Srila Prabhupada, Charadeshna Prabhu, who left his body yesterday, he was absorbed in book distribution, so absorbed in book distribution. And therefore he is so exalted because he dedicated his life to this mission of book distribution. And therefore he is worshipable. That is all I had prepared today. So I'd like to open up for questions and comments, if anybody has anything. Okay. Somebody could flip the camera too.
Hare Krishna.
Oh.
It's not connected. Maybe you have to increase the volume on it. No, not that volume. The volume on the...
No, you squeeze the...
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. This is number 5, channel number 5.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. Okay, anyways.
The things, it can still pick up the live stream.
Yeah, so
okay.
for live stream it'll work.
That's okay.
So, 4 corrections.
Okay.
So, we do not fall in the category of sadhana, siddha. Siddha means perfect. We are just called sadhakas.
In the future, we may fall into the category of sadhana.
We may become sadhana siddhas, or we may become, any of the other siddhas.
Oh, okay.
But, but the point is that we're not siddhas yet, we're sadhakas. We are practicing sadhaka. So sadhana siddha is one who has already practiced and achieved perfection.
Right. So how do you like, if one can become a nitya siddha, nitya meaning eternal, siddha perfect, then how can one become a nitya siddha if a nitya siddha is an eternally perfect
No, I'm speaking of sadhana siddha and kripa siddha.
Oh, okay. Nitya siddha never becomes a conditioned soul.
No, I mean, the nitya siddhas do not become conditioned.
Okay, yeah.
But, Now, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that the Mahatattva and the causal ocean are two different things. The causal ocean
Oh, okay.
actually is transcendental water.
That's Garbhodakashai Vishnu's resting in the
no,
causal ocean?
No. Causal ocean is Karana ocean.
Okay, yeah.
The Karana ocean is the water of the Ganga.
Is the
And
water of the Ganga?
Is transcendental. It is transcendental water. It is not material
Okay.
water. It has nothing to do with Mahatattva.
Okay.
The Mahatattva is the aggregate total of all the material elements and matter and the three modes of material nature, all in its unmanifested form. The living entities get merged into that, and then that also goes back into Mahavishnu. So,
So it's sort of like a undercurrent,
No, it's
from a
the
visual
shadow.
standpoint. It's a shadow.
well, the Mahatattva is the shadow, or Durga Devi, who's a shadow of Mahalakshmi. That is,
The Mahatattva is Durga Devi, you're
Yeah.
saying? Oh,
I mean,
okay.
she is the master of that.
Okay.
It is her energy. That is
Right,
the
right,
energy.
okay.
Mahatattva is material energy, period.
Okay.
So,
Right. In
And
its
then-
unmanifested state.
yeah, then when it becomes manifested, creates the pradhana, and then anyways, it goes like that.
Yeah.
Then the four kinds of people who approach Krishna, they're not karma yogis.
Oh, really?
They're not
Okay.
workers. They're just pious people. Four kinds of pious people, as Krishna says mentioned.
Okay.
They're not karma yogis, because one of them is jnani. How is jnani karma yogi? He's not
True.
He's jnani.
Right.
So that's not karma yogi. And finally, regarding faithful. So, hold on, sorry. Okay, so
Wait, Prabhu, one
now
question about... Yeah, just making sure I understand this correctly. So this verse, Chatur Vidha Bhajante Mam, it's describing those who, I guess, serve the Lord
Pious.
with pious,
There are the four kinds of pious people.
who may take to devotional
One
service.
who's called pious means he is pious because he has some inclination to approach Krishna.
Right. But still material desires are there.
Yeah, they're there.
So if one is approaching Krishna to satisfy material desires, doesn't that make one a karma yogi?
No.
No?
Oh,
okay.
Materialist, those who are vikarmis, they're not karma yogis, they have material desires. Just because somebody has material desire doesn't mean that they're necessarily a karma yogi. A jnani may have material desires, but he's not actively trying to pursue them. A karma yogi is attached to fulfilling material desires.
Specifically
a jnani
refers
is
to
not
the
actually
process.
Actually, a jnani is not attached to fulfilling material desires. He has material desires, but he is interested after knowledge. That makes him very different to a karma yogi.
Right.
So just the many kinds of people who have material desires. It doesn't make them a karma yogi. The Ashtanga yogis also have material desires to achieve mystic siddhis. That is a material desire, but that doesn't make them a karmi. They are Ashtanga yogis. So karma yogi specifically refers to those who are attached to fulfilling material desires through the process of performing karma, which is delineated as the duties as part of varna and ashram.
Okay.
So the varnashram system, karma yogis specifically fall under varnashram.
So following dharmic rules and regulations, not for the purpose of liberation.
For the purpose of fulfilling material desires.
Right. Not for the purpose of liberation. That classifies one as a karma yogi.
So a karma yogi, that classifies one as a karmi. Now, karma yogi is one who has approached Krishna, who understands that Krishna is the source of everything, and he approaches Krishna to fulfill those material desires. And
Which is different than approaching the dharmic system.
No, yeah, because you could
Yeah.
worship demigods and fulfill your desires.
Right,
It does
right.
not make you a karma yogi. And plus, a karma yogi is attached to Krishna. But he's very attached to his material desires also.
So it's like an in-between.
They're devotees of Krishna. All the karma yogis, they're devotees of Krishna. But they have material desires. But there are materialists who fall in the Vedic system, who are pious, in the sense that they follow the Vedas, but they're not karma yogis, they're just karmis. Actually, we use this word karmis for people outside, but actually
not
they're
correct.
not karmis,
Yeah.
they're vikarmis.
Vikarmis, yeah.
Vikarmis are those who are attached to fulfilling material desires, but who have no regard for the Vedas. Those who have regard for the Vedas, but very attached to fulfilling material desires, but are not devotees of Krishna, they are karmis. Then you have karma yogis, which sometimes, the word is loosely used. Like you say jnanis, there are jnanis who are not jnana yogis. The jnana yogi is one who has become a devotee of Krishna but is still attached to mental speculation.
It's like the in-between phase between being a devotee, or being a pure devotee, and being a karmi is being a karma yogi. Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
But the same time, in between phase of being a devotee and being a jnani is a jnana yogi.
Right. Okay.
So like this, there are people who achieve mystic siddhis without being devotees of Krishna. It's not that you have to be, you can get mystic siddhis otherwise. Like for instance, there are these Naga Babas who are worshippers of Shiva. And they engage in very austere types of life and they have mystic powers, but they are not Ashtanga yogis. Ashtanga yogis are those who have become devotees of Krishna. Their devotional service is mixed with this attachment to performing Ashtanga yoga. Similarly, Jnana yogi is one whose devotional service is mixed with the desire to speculate.
Right.
And then a karma yogi is one whose devotional service is mixed with his eagerness to fulfill material desires.
Right. Like the process of karma yoga or jnana yoga is like a bridge.
Or the karma yogi also,
yoga, I think.
He is attached to the rules and regulations of the varnashram system and is still in one sense stuck in that bodily concept of life. But he is also a devotee of Krishna. But he is very much attached to these conceptions of varna and ashram. This is also characteristic of karma yogi. Then you have the vikarmis who are completely out of the Vedic system,
Right.
who are basically the infidels.
Yeah.
Now, actually, that's my point, that although in some places Srila Prabhupada has used this word faithful to refer to those who are following any type of religion, as he says here in the Canto 3, Chapter 31, Text 32, in Kapila's teachings. He says that Hindus, Muslims and Christians are faithful in their particular type of religion. He says they're faithful in their particular type of religion. However, in this particular purport, that faithful does not refer to them. Because Prabhupada writes that okay, yeah. So this is Madhya Leela. This is the famous one. Shraddhavan Jan Hai Bhakti Adhikari. Uttama Madhyama Kanishta Shraddha Anusari. So, this the translation goes that a faithful devotee is truly is a truly eligible candidate for the loving service of the Lord. According to one's faith, one is classified as a topmost devotee, intermediate devotee, or an inferior devotee. Then, purport. Very first line. The word Shraddhavan, Prabhupada then puts within parenthesis, faithful means, the word faithful, Shraddhavan, means understanding Krishna to be the Samam Bonam, the eternal truth and absolute transcendence. This is what faithful means.
Right.
You accept that Krishna is Supreme Personality, you got it. This is what makes one from a karmi into a karma yogi. He has accepted that Krishna is supreme. He may not be actively practicing, he may not even be chanting regularly or whatever, but he is still considered a karma yogi because he has simply accepted Krishna as Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he has accepted that devotional service is the most supreme method of worshipping Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
One accepts this, one is a devotee. But he may still be attached to mental speculation or whatever. Or he may be attached to Ashtanga Yoga, or he may be attached to fulfilling material desires in a pious way and living a pious life and all that kind of stuff. But he's considered karma yogi. Now, and Prabhupada further says that, he says that in Upadeshamrita, text 5, purport, faith means strong faith. This is what faith means. Faith means strong faith. It doesn't, like we say Hindus, Muslims, Christians have faith. But that faith, when it's used, we're referring to weak faith because that faith can be changed.
Mm-hmm.
Today, one day a Muslim may become a Christian, then Christian may become Muslim, Hindu may become Christian. This is all weak faith. That faith is not what we define as faith. Faith means strong faith. What is that faith? The words of Bhagavad Gita are authoritative instructions for faithful men. And whatever Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita is considered as authoritative. And Prabhupada writes, Shraddha, faith, means accepting the instructions of Bhagavad Gita in totality. Right? Shraddha means accepting the instructions of Bhagavad Gita in their totality, especially the last instruction. Sarva dharman parititya mamekam sharanam vraja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. When one becomes completely faithful in regard to this instruction, one's strong faith becomes the basis of advancing in spiritual life. And then Prabhupada, this I read yesterday over Prasadam, but Prabhupada writes that so among the karmis, some are vikarmis. And Prabhupada writes that such karmis are superior to vikarmis, for they are faithful to the direction of the Vedas and certainly dear to Krishna. So because Muslims, Christians, and even many Hindus, they don't care about the Vedas. They call themselves Hindus, they don't give a fig about the Vedas. They are actually vikarmis. And they fall under the category
Infidels?
of because they are not considered, like you go up here, if you go up here, Prabhupada writes that, so go down. So, of the ever condition being, there are two divisions, the faithful and the infidels. So, immediately faithful means one who has accepted the Vedas, the instructions of the Vedas. Then you have the mental speculators and you have the devotees. Right? So, of course, now the mental speculators who desire to merge into the Supreme, they may accept Krishna as Supreme, but they want to merge. Ultimately, they think that Krishna is Supreme, representation of that Supreme Brahman, but then above Krishna is this impersonal Brahman, I want to merge with him.
Right.
So that's a very dangerous situation. But yeah, I mean, the point is that this faithful is different. Although, in one sense, what you have said, Prabhupada has also said things in that way, but here in this particular purport, in the context of how it's being spoken, this faithful refers to those who are already accepting the Vedas.
Okay. Any other?
Oh, it's 9:01.
Anybody else?
Prabhu, you were distinguishing Mayavadis from impersonalists.
Yeah.
In particular, like what is the difference? I thought they're the same.
Well, the impersonalists, they accept the supremacy of Krishna, whereas the Mayavads, they think they are Krishna. Mayavadis think they are Krishna. So impersonalists, they're not necessarily offensive to Krishna, whereas the Mayavadis are. That's it in brief.
Yeah, basically, I'd like to clarify even what I said. The point is that there are mental speculators who desire to become one with the existence of God, meaning that they want the Sayujya Mukti. They accept Krishna as supreme. But the Mayavadis, they don't accept that. I mean, they think that them and Krishna are one. It's a little different. But Prabhupada also used that word impersonalists and Mayavadis interchangeably.
Yeah.
Because most impersonalists, it's very difficult, that's a very, very fine line there that you probably won't even see in the modern world.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, impersonalists, they may attain the destination of merging into the Brahma Jyoti, whereas Mayavads, they just make offenses and they can't do that.
Yeah,
They go
cannot-
into lower life forms,
Yeah.
Mayavads, Mayavadis. Yes, please, Mataji.
I was just wondering do demigods only take birth in devotee families, or could they take birth in demoniac families too?
Well, there is this instance I cited of King Indra making an offense and therefore taking up the body of a pig. You ask about demigods taking up demonic species of life. I don't have a reference offhand. But hypothetically speaking, I think if the offense is great enough, then I think that's possible. That's a speculation, but I don't have any.
Yeah. No, they don't take birth as demoniac.
They don't take birth as demoniac.
No, not to my knowledge. I haven't seen even one instance.
Yeah, there's not, maybe not an instance in Shastra.
If they offend, then they can be born, like you said, as a pig. But in general, it's not that they even get born as devotees.
In general, it's not that they get born as devotees.
Well, yeah, they might. It depends who they are.
It depends on who they are.
But, they can come down.
They can come down.
Be born in a pious family.
They could be born in a pious family in the material world. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vancha kalpa tirupyascha kripasantubhya vicha, Patitanam pavanepyo vaishnavepyo namo namaha.